Aloha and good morning. I hope everything's going well for all of you. It's Saturday. We just had Friday the 13th yesterday. What a fun day. My daughter was like, "What does that mean?" And I was watching my 12-year-old try to explain this. And she just looked at him and went, "Yeah, it's Friday, Dad. What's the big deal?" Anyway, so hope you guys are doing well. Let's see, let's jump right into it. I have a fun question here. First of all, the student asked that I just read the question on the email. Talked a little bit about her personal background and whatnot and what training she had been to. And so here's the question. I would really appreciate an elaboration or explanation on the presupposition of NLP. Behavior and change are to be evaluated in terms of context and ecology. And then she went on to say, the way that I look at life is not the same since the training. There's a massive amount of information that was given to us. Please accept my humblest appreciation for the amazing weekend. Very blessed to have been able to attend. Thank you very much for being there. This was a Toronto practitioner training that we did. And yeah, it's a 4-day training, but it's a full practitioner training. Tons of information in there. The NLP presuppositions are a part of what we teach. And I know a lot of different branches of NLP teach them. We really focus in on the NLP presuppositions because they are assumptions that are made by some of the most successful people on the planet. And they were modeled from a variety of individuals, including the people like Virginia Satir, Milton Erickson, Fritz Perls, Richard Bandler, and then other successful people. In our branch of NLP, we looked at other successful people and what are their ways of thinking, what are their ways of focus. Let's specifically look at this presupposition of NLP. The presupposition of NLP is that behavior and change are to be evaluated in terms of context and ecology. That means that a person's behavior and what change you want to assist them in creating, you need to evaluate their behavior and you need to evaluate the change based on ecology and what context the behavior is going to be in. Now, the reason why this is important, first of all, I'll start off with why is this important? Because sometimes we go in and we think, this would be the best change for that individual. This would be a fabulous behavior for that individual. And a lot of people who have not been thoroughly trained, as I have, and again, I say this very humbly, I have a background in psychology. I have a PhD in psychology. So I've really I did my first NLP training when I was 11, did the fire walk with Anthony Robbins, and absolutely transformed my life. So you look at the fact that I'm 40 right now, so 29 years, okay, if you take out the teenage years, you're talking about 20 years in this field now, studying, working. If you include having taken my first training, 30 years, doctorate in health psychology. My PhD is in psychology. Here's a great way to understand this. Without this type of background like I have, sometimes you're sitting there and you're thinking, wow, I learned this NLP stuff. I want to go help this person with this new behavior. And I have seen so many people over the years rush right in thinking that a behavior will be perfect for this individual, and they never take a step back and evaluate. Will this behavior be appropriate for this individual in the context that he or she lives in? And do they ever do an ecology check? Most people don't. And, historically speaking on this planet, we have wiped out entire civilizations because we have gone in and thought that a certain behavior, a certain way of thinking, or that if we would just change these savages, that we would make them better. And this happened here in the islands of Hawaii, where Westerners came in and believed that they had a better way of thinking and almost completely wiped out, decimated a civilization. And we've done that across the planet historically. Now, I don't usually go off on historical or political concepts or global, I really try to bring it home one-on-one. Okay, so let's bring it home one-on-one. Let's say you're working with a lady who is in an abusive relationship, and let's say that the woman is in a relationship with a man who's an abuser. Now, one behavior that I think would be phenomenal for women, and my wife is an empowered individual, my mother, an amazingly empowered woman. My daughter, wow, I teach her to stand up for herself, to speak out, to be vocal. And for those of you that have met my wife, you know that that is exactly the way that she is. And my mother is the same way. If you teach a woman who is in an abusive relationship to become vocal and to stand on their own and to speak out against the abuser, they could go back home, say the wrong thing, and get killed. And that's just it. Plain and simple. I don't mean to bring in the negative internal representation here at this point, but I got to really hammer this point home. We sometimes think, oh, this person's in a relationship. Maybe the woman hasn't given you the full detail. Maybe this lady who's in the relationship hasn't given you the total detail. And you think, you know what? You should go home and you should confront that man and you should tell him exactly how you feel. And you might do some techniques with this person and you might help her become so empowered. And she'll go home and confront. And you know, that can be one of the most dangerous things. See, if you don't fully understand the context, if you don't do an ecology check, and ecology, listen carefully, ecology is the study of good for self. Now, is it good for the woman to become amazingly articulate at explaining her desires and needs? You bet. Is it good for others? Yeah, she could be a role model. She could be a person that's out there. Oh, is it good for her in the relationship that she's in? Context, yeah? Ecology, good for self, good for others, good for community. You might on the surface say yes. But for those of you that haven't been trained as thoroughly as I have, you don't understand the statistics and the variables that go into a relationship. You don't understand the case studies, the factors that are involved, and quite frankly, the most empowering behavior that you can give a person who is in an abusive relationship is the ability to get out of the relationship. Now, some of you might be sitting here listening to the blog going, well, yeah, well, that's the behavior that I'd do. But even that behavior, statistically speaking, teaching a person to get out of an abusive relationship and seek a shelter and protection from the physical abuser, that is statistically the best behavior that you can give someone. And still, I would take a step back, and when someone is dangerous to self or others, you got to completely evaluate the context and ecology. Now, let me say this from my heart. I have taken the question to an extreme. I have taken the question to an extreme because I really want you guys to understand the thinking that is involved in helping someone create change. What about teaching a kid to stand up for themselves to a person who is bullying them on the playground? Is that ecological? Is that contextually appropriate? Well, in the school that my kids go to, any type of bullying is inappropriate. And so an actual behavior that might be better, rather than teaching your son to fight back, which could end up getting him expelled, would be to teach him how to communicate the bullying to a person of authority. Now, you might be sitting there going, well, these are all no-brainers, and yet, again, this presupposition is so important because those of you that do change work, you really sometimes have to take a step back and go, you know, the behavior that you think is the best behavior may not necessarily be the best behavior in every given context with all ecology checks. One behavior in a specific context may be positive and in an entirely different context, putting in an entirely different environment or situation. That's what a context is, a different situation. You may entirely change whether or not that behavior is positive or not. Some behaviors are extremely important. If you're going to be living in a dangerous situation, you need to learn how to fight. Teaching someone how to fight for themselves, teaching someone how to physically protect themselves in one situation may be positive, in another it may be detrimental. And so behavior and change. What is a person's behavior and what type of change do I want to help them create needs to be evaluated in terms of context. What is the overall environment that they are in, all the situations, and you got to check the ecology. I know I talked a long time about this, and yet I'm very sure based on the emails that a lot of you are in this field of personal growth and development and assisting other individuals, or you yourself may be going to trainings. You may be coming to my upcoming training in, Seattle or San Jose or San Diego, and you might be asking yourself, wow, the change that Matt used to create health, the change that Matt used, I want that. You don't necessarily want that. It may not work in your context. It may not work for your lifestyle. Yeah. So you always got to check context and ecology. I hope this was a helpful blog. It was a little bit more on the technical side of things working with individuals, but yet we've been having some really fun blogs, so I thought this would be a nice shift. Anyway, we're at about 10 minutes, so let me wrap this up. Thank you again for listening to the audio blog. I hope this, again, was a helpful one. So let's wrap up as we normally do. We say malama pono, we all stand in righteousness. Aloha kea kua, love is our shield. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be your best. And finally, aloha a hui ho. Class dismissed. Love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.